Recently, I have been thinking a lot about my favorite shonen arcs and what separates the good ones from the bad. The mastery of an arc is essential for the momentum of a series, often introducing unique villains and putting our characters in different situations. In this video, I want to explore the Chimera Ant arc and try and uncover what makes it so effective in the larger narrative of Hunter x Hunter. Before we continue, I recently launched a Patreon account. If you enjoy this video and my work, go to the link down below to support me. To understand what makes the Chimera Ant arc so successful, we first need to look at the role of an arc. There are a handful of aspects that I look at when I am evaluating an arc. Firstly, how does it work on its own and in the larger narrative? Does the arc feel like its own self-contained story, and does that story fit well with the larger narrative? The Chimera Ant arc fitting into this perfectly. To create a long-running shonen, you need arcs that flow within the story, but individually are great on their own. I tend to think of arcs as their own self-contained narrative that are only made better when you look at it as a piece of a whole. And yes, many aspects of what make an arc good overlap with the basics of storytelling, but it is when you place the arc in a larger story that it takes on a different perspective. Throughout Hunter x Hunter, there is a logical progression from each story arc, almost an elegant flow between each big narrative location, going from the Hunter exam to the Zoltex, then to York New City and Greed Island. But the Chimera Ant arc fills a slightly different role than every other arc in the series because of its unpredictability. At the end of Greed Island, we could have never guessed that Gon and Killua would be sent to Kite, and that the threat of the Chimera Ants would turn out to be this important. But it also fits in the narrative perfectly. Before this, Gon and Killua had a good sense of where they wanted to go. They had a plan. That plan led them to Greed Island in hopes that it would solve their issues. Greed Island was supposed to be the solution to finding Jean, but it wasn't. Gon, at this point in the story, still has some development to go through, and so we get the Chimera Ant arc, with this arc not only filling an important role in the narrative, but being its own well-thought-out story with a 3-act structure. The first act of the story focuses on what the Chimera Ants are and showing just the kind of threat they hold. That being punctuated by the death of Kite to end the first act. The second act focuses on Gon and Killua's training and shows that they are strong enough to stay in this fight, with the third act being the final battle between the hunters and ants. A narrative that works perfectly on its own, but holds even more stakes when you consider everything Gon and Killua have gone through up to this point, with the unpredictable nature of this arc perfectly echoing the thematic elements it explores. The second thing to focus on is how does the arc thematically evolve the story, but stay consistent in its own narrative. The Chimera Ant arc explores many different ideas, but the two that I find the most interesting are the Black Swan and what makes us human. A Black Swan event is a world-changing moment that was unpredictable. We are living through a Black Swan event currently with COVID-19. The rise of the Chimera Ants being unpredictable in the narrative and echoing what it is like to run into a Black Swan event in real life. It is argued that a Black Swan event is what shapes our world as we know it, and our constant daily lives are trying to figure out how to react to these events, even though they are unpredictable. And in Hunter x Hunter, when the Chimera Ants start becoming an issue, it is important enough to make the strongest hunter in the world stop everything and put his life on the line to save humanity. Everything we thought we knew about the world of Hunter x Hunter is flipped with the introduction of the Chimera Ants. Mirroring today, where everything in our world has been flipped because of this virus. the Chimera Ant arc showing us the importance of the Black Swan event. The other main question the Chimera Ant arc explores being what makes us human and how far will the human race go to protect what is ours. These questions are at the center of the arc, but if I were to explore them deeper in this video, it would likely be a few hours long. The thematic exploration of this arc being without a doubt my favorite aspect of it, for how the themes are mirrored through the character actions and fight scenes. These thematic explorations are fleshed out through much of the character development in the arc. Lastly, we have the characters of an arc, with specifically how the main cast changes and the role of the antagonist. Gon and Killua, who carry much of the story, have amazing progression in this arc that fits with where they have been building throughout the series. This is where the biggest advantage of a long-running series comes into play. The Chimera Ant arc benefits from the previous character work of Gon and Killua, so it can spend more time fleshing out new characters, but not losing development for the main cast. Gon and Killua reaching character climaxes in this arc that have been built up from the beginning of the series. In a story that focuses so heavily on what it means to be human, it is only fitting that the development between Gon and Killua is centered around their humanity. Gon losing his, and Killua finding his. Gon throughout the story has been the most kind character who embodies an almost childish positivity on the world. Throughout the start of the series, we see moments of Gon's stubbornness, the lengths at which he will go to achieve something when he sets his mind to it. Except this time, he can't save his friend Kite, and so, in a stubborn rage, Gon loses all sense of his humanity, and sacrifices his life to become a monster. Killua, on the other hand, has shown to be a monster in his own right throughout the series. The little assassin showing many moments of monstrous acts, often being held back by the shackles of his family. But in this arc, he breaks those shackles and finds his humanity, doing everything he can to save Gon. Gon and Killua get some major development in this arc, but the villains are given equal development as well. Meruem is my favorite villain of all time for his beautiful development from an all-powerful tyrant to a sympathetic person. A person who has only made one real relationship in his life. While we see our main character lose his humanity, in the same way Killua finds his, so does Meruem. This isn't even to mention characters like Pito and Poof, who take other sides on what it means to be a human and an animal. The accumulation of all of these aspects is what leads to the Chimera Ant arc being one of the greatest arcs in the history of anime. Each character progression leads to a web of well-developed ideas and motivations that draw interesting conclusions about what makes us human and how fragile humanity is. And in the larger narrative of the series, the Chimera Ant arc takes our two protagonists, Gon and Killua, and finalizes development that has been hinted at from the first arc of the series, adding to the layered world of Hunter x Hunter and breathing new life into a story that only seems to grow in complexity as it moves forward. It is for these reasons why the Chimera Ant arc is one of the greatest in all of shonen. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I love the Chimera Ant arc, obviously, and I want to explore more shonen battle arcs. The Chunin exams is one that I've thought about a lot lately, so watch out for a video on that. And if you want more Hunter x Hunter content, I have a video called Hunter x Hunter: A Perfect Episode, which explores the 85th episode of the series, which is right at the first act of the Chimera Ant arc. So go check that out, linked down below. And if you guys want to support my work, my Patreon is also linked down below. And follow me on Twitter at AnnieEssays. Thank you guys guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.